Hello, welcome. We're going to get started. My name is Richard Elliott with the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network. I'm delighted to co-chair this session with my colleague Annabelle Raw from the Southern African Litigation Centre. And I will turn it over to Annabelle to get us started.
Good morning. Apologies, our first speaker, Hussein, wasn't able to join us. So we're going to proceed to our second speaker, Alfiana. Alfiana is a human rights defender. She currently works at the Persaudaraan Korban Nabsa Indonesia, the Indonesian Drug Users Network, as a legal advocacy advisor. And she will be speaking to us about the role of paralegals, and in particular drug user community paralegals, in advancing access to justice. Thank you.
So you should be able to just play the video by clicking on him. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, you can just signal to him at the back and he'll come in.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Alfiana Kisti. I'm from Persaudaraan Korban Nabsa Indonesia. It's Indonesian Drug User Network. And today I will present about the drug user paralegal that from drug user community members from PKNI. So I will present about the role of paralegals from drug user communities in the fulfillment of the drug user rights. So this is the PKNI. PKNI is the national body that represents the prioritize and needs of the Indonesian drug user community at the local and national level. So PKNI has 25 groups or former and current drug users across 19 provinces in Indonesia. Before I continue the presentation, maybe I will give the picture about the epidemic of injustice that occur in Indonesia. So the drug policy in Indonesia, which put in the narcotic law number 35 year 2009, and currently also in the Indonesian Criminal Code revision, the drug policy still criminalize the people who use drugs and also people who inject drugs. So the drug policy criminalized the drug user, and it became like over criminalization because of the using drugs. The drug user can charge also with the possessing drugs and also carrying drugs, and they will go to jail and also pay the fines. And the situation is getting worse because the lack of legal aid access. Because in Indonesia, there's not so many legal aid organizations that would handle the drug cases because of the morality and also the stigma and discrimination. So, for example, in Indonesia, there's only 2 legal aid organizations that will handle the drug cases. It's like LBH Masyarakat and also PBHI. And it became worse because of the lack of health access. If the drug user then sent to the prison, then they will not get the rights of health, because in the prison there's a very lack of health access. There's no needle syringe program, and it will worsen because the infectious disease, other infectious disease, and this. And the situations will lead to human rights violation towards people who use drugs. if we look on the data and drug users in prison, it's increasingly growing. In 2015, there's 219, and it become increase in 2017. So if we go back to the lack of legal aid access, then the drug user community paralegal is very significant, can give the significant contribution to overcome that problem, that no legal aid access. So what the drug user community paralegal role is, the first is about the legal and health assistance. So PKNI run the paralegal programs in 10 cities in Indonesia. And every month they do the case investigation. So when the drug user or the community members came to them and report the case, and the paralegal will do the case investigation to make sure the chronology and etc. And after that, paralegal will ensure the assessment process. So the assessment process is the process in the investigation step in the criminal justice system in Indonesia that will define the user and the deal, between the user and the dealer. Then paralegal will encourage law enforcement to stop the criminal process. So paralegal will encourage law enforcement to use their discretion to stop the criminal process for drug user. And also, if based on their case investigation, then paralegal found that the client needs has the special needs, then paralegal will fulfill the health needs. Because, for example, if the client is from Piwit, then paralegal will encourage the law enforcement to fulfill their OST. Or if the client is people with living with HIV, so they will encourage the police to fulfill the ARV. Why it is important? Because the law enforcement in Indonesia still don't know about the health needs of people who use drugs. Then paralegal will documenting the case process. They will also documenting about the torture and the bribery process. And also to support their work, they will do the partnership with legal aid organization and harm reduction organization, because if this case going through to the prosecution and the trial, they need the lawyer that assists the client. This is the photos of what paralegal work in the legal and health assistance. So from 2017, PKNI has handled 145 cases in 10 cities that 85 cases go through the criminal proceeding, but they succeeded in stopping the criminal proceeding. It's in 60 cases, which no evidence found, and also succeeded encouraging the police sending client to rehabilitation. And this is the best practice of our paralegal. It's a woman paralegal. So for 2017 until 2018, we involve the woman paralegal to do the legal and health assistance. It's Rosma Karlina. She's from West Java, that help the woman who use drugs and also living with HIV in a methadone program in dealing with criminal justice system. Then she trying to encourage the police officer to use his discretion in order to release the client and allow her to continue the methadone. And the result is the client released by the police, and the police allow her to continue the methadone. And after that, so we also expand the function of the paralegal. It's not only legal assistance, but also giving the legal education to raise the awareness of the community about the criminal justice systems and about their rights. They increase in knowledge of the legal process among the drug-using community, also improve the community's capacity to engage in advocacy on legal issues, and also empower the drug user community to act as paralegals for their peers. So they will give the education to community members, and 2 photos here taken in a hotspot. Then paralegal also has a significant contribution in drug policy reform. So our paralegal also involved in mass movement that to create public pressure to government or policymaker. This is the mass protest of Indonesian criminal code, because Indonesian criminal code put the sanctions for the drug user. This is the same sample of what paralegal do in mass protests. So it's taken in International Women's Day. And this is our paralegal from 10 cities came to Jakarta. And this is our women paralegal from Bengkulu. It's in Sumatra. She's voicing out about the women who use drugs rights. We demand, we call for 7 demands.
Dari persaudaraan korban nafsa Indonesia yang mewakili 25 kelompok dari 17 provinsi di Indonesia. Di sini kami perempuan korban nafsa Indonesia menuntut.
Okay, so from that activities, the lesson learned is the drug user community paralegal has very significant contribution in the fulfillment of drug users' rights, especially as access of justice and access to health, because of the lack of legal aid and also lack of access to health. And from the experience, the paralegal from drug users can handle the case even better than a lawyer. Why? Because the paralegal itself, because they are from the drug users community, so they really know about the case, how the case going on, and also the special needs that really needed for the drug users. And drug user paralegal get more trust from the clients, because we know that the clients from drug user is very inclusive and scared because of the stigma and discrimination. So they, you know, it's not easy to speak out about their case. So if paralegal came to them and talked with them, then the paralegal gets more trust from the client. And also the drug user community paralegal has very significant role in drug policy reform. So the recommendation is needs to strengthening the role of drug user community paralegal and its legitimacy in the legal sphere, because now in Indonesia, the legitimacy of paralegal is very weak. But now we are trying to encourage the policymaker to strengthening the legitimacy of paralegal. Then to ensuring the sustainability of the peer paralegal program. Then more paralegal equal more drug users diverted away from prison and toward treatment, and also increasing paralegal skill in case handling and drug policy reform. So yeah, our jargon is prison is not solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to note, we'll take questions after all 4 presentations, so please do note your questions if you have any. Next up, we have Maxim Malishev. Maxim is working in harm reduction for the past 15 years. He went from a volunteer to a project manager. He has a diploma with honors in social work and is professionally engaged in upholding the rights of drug users and people living with HIV on the basis of the Andrei Rylkov Foundation. Maxim will be speaking to us about a street lawyers program in Moscow that is working to protect the rights of people who use drugs and people living with HIV. This is the only harm reduction project in Moscow. Maxim? And just to note, some of Maxim's presentation will be in Russian, and we've been gladly assisted by Anya, who is volunteering to translate some of those portions for us.
Yes. Да. Странно, что я второй. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Максим, и я из Москвы.
Hi, my name is Maxim, and I'm from Moscow.
Я работаю в прекрасном месте. Это фонд имени Андрея Рылькова, который занимается снижением вреда в Москве.
I work in a wonderful place that is called Andrei Rylkov Foundation, and that works in harm reduction in Moscow.
И это моя жизнь.
And this is my life.
Сегодня я хочу рассказать вам о нашем опыте 4 лет работы уличными юристами.
Today I want to tell you about the 4 years of experience in Moscow working as street lawyers.
И начну я с ситуации в Москве.
And I will start with the background situation in Moscow.
В Москве 12,5 миллионов жителей.
We have 12.5 million people who live in the city.
В Москве практически 26 тысяч людей стоит на наркологическом наркоучете.
And almost 26,000 are registered in the drug treatment facility, so officially registered as drug.
И эта цифра абсолютно не отражает реальное число зависимых людей.
But of course, this figure absolutely does not reflect the real number of people who use drugs.
Также в Москве 32 тысячи людей, живущих с ВИЧ.
Also in Moscow, there is a little over 32,000 people who are officially registered as living with HIV.
Во всей России их чуть менее миллиона.
In Russia, overall, it is чуть более миллиона. It is a little over a million.
Живущих. Ну ладно, окей. И это тоже официальные цифры, которые не отражают действительность.
And this is also only official figures that do not reflect the real situation.
Также в Москве, в отличие от многих других городов России, много разных видов наркотиков.
Also in Moscow, unlike in many other cities in Russia, in Moscow we have a large variety of drugs that are being used and injected.
Есть стимуляторы, есть опиаты, есть много чего.
A lot of different kinds of stimulants, opiates, and many other drugs.
И на всю Москву всего лишь один проект снижения вреда. Это наш проект.
And we have only one harm reduction project, which is our project.
Я бы тут мог показать на этой карте наш офис, но не буду этого делать.
Okay, this is the map of Moscow. I could show the office on this map, but it's really difficult.
И я хочу продолжить проблемами прав людей, употребляющих наркотики в России, в частности в Москве.
And I would like to briefly introduce the problems that people who use drugs experience in Moscow and in Russia.
Первое – это репрессивная наркополитика.
The main problem is repressive drug policy.
В России уголовно наказуемо хранение, перевозка, предоставление помещения под употребление и, более того, разговоры о наркотиках. Ну, вот закон о пропаганде.
So in Russia, there is criminal prosecution for possessing drugs for personal use, also for transporting drugs for personal use, and even for discussing drugs. There is a drug propaganda law.
Количество заключенных по наркостатьям составляет 136 тысяч, из 495 это практически 30%.
Out of almost 500,000 people who are in prisons in Russian penitentiary system, 136,000 are there for drug offenses. That is almost 30%.
Следующая проблема – это наркологический учет.
The other problem is registration in the drug treatment facilities.
Наркологический учет ущемляет людей в правах. Он не дает людям получить права на автомобиль, устроиться на хорошую работу.
So the registration in the drug treatment facilities restricts citizens' rights. For example, it leads to the situation when a person cannot get a driving license or they cannot find a job.
Это клеймо на всю жизнь, которое практически невозможно снять.
And this is a label for all the person's life, which is very difficult to get rid of.
Следующая проблема людей, употребляющих наркотики, это затрудненный доступ к медицинским услугам.
Another problem of people who use drugs is obstructed access to health services.
Люди не могут получать медицинскую помощь из-за того, что они наркопотребители.
People find it difficult. It's difficult to people to get access to medical help because of their drug use.
Очень похожая проблема – это затрудненный доступ к наркологической помощи. Наркологическая помощь в России очень высокопороговая.
And a similar problem is difficulty with access of drug treatment, which is very high threshold in Russia.
И, конечно же, это стигма и дискриминация на всех уровнях.
And of course, stigma and discrimination on all the levels.
Следующий слайд – это, я расскажу коротко о фонде имени Андрея Рылькова.
So, next slide, I will shortly tell you about our organization, Andrei Rylьков Foundation.
Мы придерживаемся 4 направлений работы.
We work in 4 areas.
Это снижение вреда.
Harm reduction.
Это работа с сообществами.
Working with the community, strengthening the community.
И кейс-менеджмент.
Case management.
Это работа с общественностью.
Work with public opinion.
И это адвокация более гуманной наркополитики.
And advocacy of more humane drug policy.
В прошлом году у нас было 480 аутрич-выходов.
Last year we had 480 outreach visits.
Чуть менее 4000 участников проекта.
A little less than 4,000 people participated in our project.
650 участников получили правовую помощь.
And 651 people have received legal support from our staff.
Было зафиксировано 107 случаев нарушения прав.
We have documented 107 cases of rights violations.
И 58 обращений и жалоб наркопотребители подали с нашей помощью.
And we have supported 58 complaints submitted by our participant to the authorities regarding these rights violations.
Сейчас я расскажу о алгоритме нашей работы.
Now I will tell about the algorithm of our work.
Самая первая ступень – это уличная социальная работа.
So the first step is street social work.
Все исходит оттуда.
And everything emerges from from the field.
Следующее это информирование. Мы постоянно информируем людей о возможностях.
The next level is informing people. We keep informing people about their opportunities all the time.
Это очень важный момент, который мы отметили. И чем больше информирования, тем больше результата.
And it's very important to inform people because the more information you are able to convey, the more positive results people can achieve.
Следующий слой – это придание сил.
The next level is empowerment.
И это один из основных моментов нашей работы, потому что без придания сил нет дальнейших действий.
And this is one of the main focus of all our work because without the empowerment it's impossible to keep on working.
Мы уделяем очень много внимания этому аспекту.
We give a lot of attention to this particular aspect.
Следующая ступень – это медиация.
The next step is mediation.
Прежде чем что-то решать в судебном порядке, мы постоянно пробуем договариваться.
Before applying to courts and going to court trials, we are trying to mediate the process.
На наш взгляд, цель уличных юристов не прийти в суд, а решить проблему человека.
In our opinion, the main aim of the Street Lawyer Project is not to go to a court, but try to solve the problem of the person we work with.
И в 70% случаев это можно сделать с помощью медиации.
And in 70% of the cases, it's possible to achieve with mediation.
Следующее – это официальное обращение в органы власти.
The next step is official address to the authorities.
Это жалобы, запросы,
So it can be a complaint, a request,
которые иногда тоже решают проблему.
that sometimes also are able to achieve a positive result.
И последний шаг – это судебная защита.
And the last step is judicial protection in the courts.
Это фото иллюстрирует нашу уличную социальную работу, и именно так, отсюда приходят люди.
This is our street work, and this is where our participants come from.
И все же, что из этого вышло?
So what are the results?
Каких результатов мы достигли?
What results have we achieved?
Прежде всего, это несколько дел в Европейском суде по правам человека.
So first of all, we have several cases, around 20 cases in the European Court on Human Rights currently.
Это стратегические дела, которые, как мы надеемся, помогут изменить наркополитику.
These are all strategic cases, so it's not just solving people's problem, but the cases that hopefully will help to change the framework, legal framework in the country for drug policy.
Конечно же, это участие в городских судах в качестве общественных защитников, консультантов и значимых свидетелей.
It's also participation in the city courts as public defenders, consultants or witnesses of the paralegals.
Следующее – это всегда медиация. Как я говорил, мы всегда пробуем сначала договориться.
Next, it's always mediation. So every time we try to come to a solution through mediation.
Следующий результат, который для нас очень важен, что нас знает и верит сообщество.
The next result that is very important for us, that we are known and trusted by the community we work with.
Это один из самых важных результатов нашей работы, и без него не получилось бы остальных.
This is probably the most important in our work, and we would not be able to achieve anything else.
Следующее, про что я хочу сказать, что мы преследуем и стратегические, и тактические цели.
Next, I would like to mention that we pursue both strategic and tactical goals.
Когда человек не готов стратегически защищать свои права, мы говорим: окей, ничего страшного, мы будем думать, что можно сделать здесь и сейчас.
And when a person is not ready or they don't want to strategically move along with their cases, we say, okay, let's just think what can be done right now.
И для нас важно не воспринимать человека как инструмент для достижения целей.
And it's important that we don't perceive a person as a tool of achieving some goals.
Следующее, что у нас получилось, то, что появилось много активистов из сообщества, которые противостоят репрессиям.
Next positive results is that we now have many activists that come from the community and who oppose the repressive drug policy.
Люди приходят на наши акции, разговаривают про наркополитику и поддерживают нас.
People come to our protests or street action. We talk about drug policy, and there is a lot of support coming from the community.
Следующее – это наша сложившаяся модель работы как связка участник, социальный работник, юрист.
The next important result for us is this combination of participant, social worker, and lawyer as a team of working on cases.
Вы можете сказать, что, возможно, социальный работник здесь лишний.
You may say that a social worker may be not needed.
Но это самый главный человек в этой связке.
But it's the most important person in this team.
Который служит, с одной стороны, переводчиком между участником и юристом.
That helps to facilitate the knowledge and communication between the participant and the lawyer.
С другой стороны, именно этот человек дает силы участникам.
And on the other hand, this person is the one who empowers the participants and supports them.
И третье, в течение реализации этого проекта все больше и больше вещей может делать социальный работник вместо юриста.
And as this project goes on, more and more things can be done by the social workers or paralegals rather than lawyers.
На фото наши акции, наши пикеты и люди.
So this is our participants and our protests and action, support don't punish action.
Yes. Но я всегда стараюсь быть честным.
So I'm trying to be honest all the time.
И хочу сказать про проблемы.
And I want to mention the problems as well.
Самая большая проблема – это то, что у участников нет или мало веры в успех.
The main problem that we face is that our participants are really disempowered and they have very little or no faith at all in the success.
Это нормально, это их жизнь, и вся жизнь им говорит о том, что очень сложно противостоять системе.
Of course, this is normal, and all their life has been teaching them that it's really difficult to oppose the system.
Следующая проблема, над которой мы всегда, как сказать, бьемся головой о стену, когда слышим, это то, что все происходит в последний день.
The other problem is that we always face is that everything is happening on the last day, so it's really difficult to plan things.
Обычно как-то все зависло.
В другую сторону.
Завис как компьютер. Что
делать?
Okay.
Yeah, it's reloading.
Вот, я пока буду говорить. Обычно это происходит так, что на утрищ приходят люди и говорят: а у меня завтра суд.
Oh, yeah, so usually people just come to outreach site and they say, I have a court tomorrow, I have a court hearing tomorrow.
Чем вы можете мне помочь?
How can you help me?
И это смешно часто.
Yeah, and it's often funny. Funny, not funny.
Следующая проблема, и нам не хочет разговаривать этот. Окей.
О, pardon. It's not working.
Не работает. Я буду делать...
Там еще много слоев?
Вот.
Но он зависает.
Зависает.
Sorry, it's just not working for some reason.
Окей. Следующая...
It just freezes.
Yes.
It's very slow.
Следующая проблема – это то, что нашим социальным работникам часто отказывают в назначении общественными защитниками.
Another problem that we faced a lot is that our social workers are always refused to be public defenders in the courts.
Российские суды очень закрыты и очень не приемлют, когда кто-то хочет войти в судебный процесс.
The Russian courts are although formally it's possible, the Russian courts are very closed and they're very opposing anyone entering the processes.
Следующая проблема, с которой мы столкнулись, то, что у наркопотребителей нет вообще в принципе понимания своих прав.
Another problem is that people who use drugs, they have no understanding of their own rights.
Права человека для них слишком абстрактное понятие.
And human rights is a too abstract notion for many people.
Следующая проблема – это очень сильная внутренняя стигма.
The other problem is a very strong internal stigma, internalized stigma.
И последнее, про что я хочу сказать, то, что приходится постоянно держать фокус команды. Сейчас я объясню.
And the last thing that I want to mention is team focus, which I will explain.
Я имею в виду то, что нашей команде социальных работников постоянно нужно прилагать усилия, чтобы держать фокус на правозащитном компоненте.
That our team of social workers and outreach workers takes a lot of effort to always focus on the legal problems.
И не скатываться просто в сервис.
And not just go back to just providing services to people.
Это та проблема, с которой мы столкнулись. И этот фокус всегда нужно держать, всегда нужно прилагать какие-то усилия.
And this problem that we faced, and that we always have to maintain this focus, and we always have to put some effort into doing
Как
that.
только мы расслабляемся, мы автоматически скатываемся до обычного сервиса.
As soon as we get a little relaxed, we just go back to providing just routine service.
Какие решения мы противопоставляем этим проблемам?
Solutions.
Мы мотивируем участников, поддерживаем их и знакомим с историями успеха тех, кто чего-то добился в отстаивании своих прав.
So we motivate people, support them, and we familiarize them with the success stories of other people who have achieved success.
У нас есть готовые шаблоны характеристик, жалоб и выступлений в качестве свидетелей.
We have the ready-made characteristics, complaints, and witnessing papers.
Это наш ответ на проблему «все последний день».
This is a response to the problem, everything in the last moment.
Очень часто мы говорим, что окей, если ты не можешь, если у тебя суд завтра, мы просто можем выступить с свидетелем.
And often we would say, okay, if you have a trial tomorrow, then we can just go there as witnesses.
А следующее, мы продолжаем пытаться, нужно делать, делать и делать.
And we keep trying, just do things, keep doing things.
Следующее наше решение, то, что мы разъясняем права на примерах, мы говорим просто.
And also we try to explain the human rights on specific examples, and we try to talk to people in a simple language.
Следующее наше решение, мы экстернализируем и говорим о сообществе.
The next we externalize and talk about the community.
Мы отделяем людей от проблемы.
We try to separate a person from the problem.
И пытаемся говорить людям, что они часть чего-то большего, часть сообщества.
And trying to convey this idea that they are part of the community and the problem may be part
И
of them.
последнее – это постоянное обучение команды, чтобы держать этот фокус.
And the last is team training to keep the focus.
На фото вы можете видеть, как в нашем автобусе мы просто на листочках пишем, что за права.
So on the photo you can see that in our bus we just write on the flip chart like what rights do you have.
И вы видите нашу газету, где мы рассказываем об историях успеха.
And also we have our newspaper where we talk about the success stories.
И последний слайд.
And the last slide,
Это наши выводы и рекомендации.
the conclusions and recommendations.
Первое, я не устаю это никогда повторять, что важна уличная социальная работа.
The first, that street work is very important.
Второе, то, что нам нужно давать, а не забирать силы у участников, делая что-то вместо них.
Second is that we need to give force and empower people rather than taking something or doing something for the
То
participant.
есть излишней гиперопекой мы часто лишаем людей сил.
So we try not to, we try not to do things for other people.
Следующее – это честность и доверие.
The next is honesty and trust.
Мы никогда не используем людей как инструменты для своих целей.
We try not to use people as the tools to achieve our goals.
Если мы преследуем какую-то стратегическую цель, мы всегда говорим об этом людям.
And if we do have some strategic goal, we always discuss it with people.
Предпоследнее – это всегда нужно помнить, что нужно закладывать ресурсы на прокачку команды.
The next, it's always important to remember that we have to have some resources set aside for pumping the team.
Это вот про фокус.
This is about the focus.
И последнее, самое банальное, это реально работает.
And the last one, which may be banal, but that it really works.
Помните об этом.
And it's important to remember. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to Anya for translating. Next, we'll have Dina Patel. Dina is working for the United Nations Development Programme as a program manager. She's based in Istanbul in Turkey and is currently managing the Global Fund Africa Regional Grant on HIV, removing legal barriers. Dina will be speaking to us about a novel method of working with judges to build their capacity on HIV and human rights in Africa.
Okay, good morning. Again, I'm Dina Patel. I'm the program manager for an Africa regional grant working on HIV and human rights in Africa. Today I'll be talking about a novel method of working with judges to build their capacity on HIV and human rights in Africa. So some background on this grant. It's funded by the Global Fund for HIV, TB, and Malaria. The grant value is $10.5 million, and the duration is 3 years. We started implementation of January 2016 and will continue through the end of this year with the possibility of a 1-year extension. We're covering 10 countries across the continent: Botswana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, Seychelles, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. We're also working regionally with the regional economic communities, SADC, EAC, ECOWAS, and AUC. The principal recipient is United Nations Development Program, and there are 4 sub-recipients under this grant. ARASA, the AIDS and Rights Alliance for Southern Africa, based in Namibia, Southern Africa Litigation Center, SALC, which is Annabelle Raw, Kellen, the Legal Network in Kenya, and lastly, Endosante, which is based in Senegal. The goal of this grant is to strengthen the legal and policy environment to reduce the impact of HIV and TB on key populations. When we talk about key populations under this grant, we're talking about men who have sex with men, transgender persons, people who use drugs, sex workers, and people living with HIV. One of the main achievements of this grant is that we've been able to strengthen the capacity of key stakeholders: parliamentarians, national human rights institutions, healthcare workers, law enforcement, lawyers, and of course, judges. In many jurisdictions, people living with HIV encounter stigma, discrimination, and violations of their rights. Protecting human rights is essential for access to services. The judiciary can play a critical role in upholding these rights. Already this morning, we've heard 2 presentations looking at the role of paralegals and lawyers. And now I'll be sharing the perspective from the judiciary. UNDP has been responsible under this grant for sensitizing the judiciary on current HIV and human rights issues. So today I'll be discussing the Africa Regional Judges Forum. My presentation has 3 parts. I'll start with background on the forum. Second, outcomes and impact. And lastly, what makes this forum different than other judicial capacity building initiatives. So again, these are the 10 countries that we're covering. You'll see that we're really working across the continent. So starting with the background. For those of you who were here earlier this week, you know that the Global Commission on HIV and the Law released a supplement to its 2012 report, Risks, Rights, and Health. The Africa Regional Judges Forum was established following the release of that report. The Commission noted that legal environments can play a powerful role in protecting the health and human rights of people living with HIV and key populations. A small group of judges from African countries decided to create a forum which would meet annually to share experiences, challenges, and new developments in HIV and TB-related laws. Since its establishment, the forum has met annually for the past 5 years. It now includes almost 40 judges from 19 countries. For comparison, when we started, there were only 11 judges from 8 countries. We're now discussing expanding this forum to include other regions, Arab states, Asia, and Eastern Europe. The previous forum included participants from Tunisia, India, and Ukraine, as well as African participants. The forum meetings are owned and planned by the judges themselves. We've covered many topics. For example, HIV-related stigma and discrimination, the criminalization of HIV transmission, exposure, and non-disclosure, sexual orientation and gender identity, prisoners, people who use drugs, adolescents' access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender inequality, customary and civil laws impacting on women, child marriage, gender-based violence, intellectual property rights and access to medicines, as well as punitive laws and policies relating to TB, amongst others. We also identify technical experts and ensure the participation of key population groups. This allows the judiciary to hear directly, firsthand, from affected population groups and civil society organizations. The judges have heard real world-life experiences from gay men and men who have sex with men, transgender persons, prisoners, people who use drugs, young women forced into child marriage, and sex workers. So outcomes and impact of this work. According to feedback from judges themselves, after the forums, we usually have evaluation sheets to see what's been gained from the trainings. The judges have said that this forum has had a significant impact on their own personal awareness and development, on their ability to sensitize other members of the judiciary, and on their access to reference materials. There's now an online searchable database of HIV, TB-related judgments. The impact of the database and the meetings has been seen in positive judicial decisions in several cases. 2 cases I'd like to share. The first one in Botswana, 2015. Justice Ki Danyake, who has been an inaugural member of the forum, who is also the chair, found that the failure of the government to provide HIV treatment to foreign prisoners, as was required under a previous court decision, to be unlawful, and ordered the government to provide such treatment immediately. The second case, 2016, in Malawi, involving the overly broad criminalization of HIV transmission. Judge Nataba overturned the conviction of an HIV-positive woman for negligently and recklessly committing an act which is likely to spread the infection of any disease which is dangerous to life, for accidentally breastfeeding another woman's child. 3 things to note here. 1, the woman did not know or believe that the breastfeeding was likely to transmit HIV. 2, the breastfeeding of the child was accidental. And 3, the child did not contract HIV. The risk was almost 0, as the woman who was breastfeeding was on ARV. In her decision, Nataba noted that the proceedings in the trial court were blatantly biased against the woman. She also made clear that the role of the criminal law should be to protect women living with HIV from the unjust consequences of public panic. It's also important to note here that SALC was responsible for training the lawyer who successfully litigated this case. So you can see how judges and lawyers working together are really making an impact in addressing HIV and human rights. Judges have also used this information from the forum to build the capacity of their peers. One judge used the information to train fellow magistrates. Another judge did an in-house training for judges from his district. The forum has also led to an initiative by the South African Judicial Education Institute to integrate trainings on HIV, TB, SRH, and human rights into judicial trainings across Africa, into their judicial curricula, as well as training of magistrates. Earlier this year, this organization did a training of magistrates in South Africa. Members of the forum also participated in the second Africa Regional Dialogue on HIV and the Law of August last year in Johannesburg, South Africa. They shared their insights and recommendations on the role of the law and the judiciary in removing legal barriers to HIV and TB in Africa. In 2017, the Forum nominated a steering committee to set the strategic direction of the Forum and to adopt a plan of action. This plan is being implemented right now. All of these developments, they show not only the impact of the work with a group of committed judges, but also the promise of sustained action in the years ahead. So lastly, what makes this Judges Forum different than other capacity building for judges? First, this forum is owned and driven by the judges themselves. A few well-respected judges from Africa sought to convene the forum. The meetings were owned and planned by the judges themselves, based on identified areas of interest and new developments in the law. And the judges have now created their own plan for long-term sustainability. Number two, medical and scientific information and testimony from key populations is absolutely critical. It's highly persuasive, and it results in an effective, pragmatic approach. As most judges are not medically trained, and they have not met members of key population groups, these interventions are often useful in exposing judges to relevant material that they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. Number three, long-term commitment to capacity building is essential. As we know, capacity building is usually one-off. However, this forum has been in existence for almost 5 years. This was adequate time to build a core group of judges who are committed and empowered. With the extension of this grant, we're planning to convene one more forum in 2019. And lastly, the importance of training other judges nationally and regionally. This has meant that even when annual meetings no longer are feasible, the capacity building can and will continue. With that, I'd like to conclude, and I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Dr. Amit Rajit Sahad, sitting here in the third row, who's really been the driving force and pioneer of this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. And on to our last speaker, Albert Wira. Albert is a researcher at LBH Masyarakat Community Legal Aid Institute, located in Jakarta, Indonesia. His main interest in research is related to mental health, HIV, drugs, and imprisonment. Albert will be speaking to us about some research that documents human rights violations experienced by key populations in Indonesia.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Albert. I am a researcher working in LBH Masyarakat, or as we call it in English, Community Legal Aid Institute. We provide free legal aid service for people from marginalized communities, such as people who use drugs, LGBTIQ communities, sex workers, people facing death penalty, and etc. And we also develop our own paralegal system, mostly recruited from the marginalized community. And right now I want to share to you one of my research that is funded by the Global Fund in 2016 to 2017 about case documentation of human rights violation across the country. And I want to talk about specific topic about redress mechanism and victim participation. So this research is done by my colleague also, Fuji Autari, who unfortunately could not come to this conference. So let me start with the background, the research background. I want to talk to you about the human rights situation in Indonesia. So the human rights situation in Indonesia is dire. There are many stigma and discrimination formed by the law and also in daily practices. And as Alvin has mentioned before, there is a criminalization of drug use. Many prisoners brought to justice because of their drug use. And last year and this year were two years that harsh condition to LGBTIQ community. There are many acts of disciplining transgender, detaining them, removing their hair, and try to masculinate them. And there's also prohibition on homosexuality in several regions in Indonesia. The picture that you see in this slide is the treatment to many Indonesian in one specific province in Aceh. So in this province, they apply the Sharia law, and there is the punishment of lashing. And recently, several gay men were lashed in the public. And also, there are many sex worker arrests in Indonesia, and they could be detained 3 to 6 months, and corporal punishment, and then violation on rights to health and education. On the other side, Indonesia has established several redress mechanisms. The parliament and the government has already issued national laws concerning human rights, public service, information transparency, and many more. And most of the governmental agencies in Indonesia has already accept internal complaint, and there are many independent bodies that accept complaint from human rights violation victims. The picture that you see is an ombudsman. Also, we have National Human Rights Commission and other independent bodies. And there's also proliferation of community-based organization and legal aid organization in Indonesia. So there's a big chance if the victims want to seek justice after their rights has been violated. So next to my research question, the first one is what type of human rights violation the HIV key population in Indonesia had to endure, and what is the characteristic of the cases. But most importantly that I want to share to you this morning is what redress that the victim sought after the violation. So we move to the methodology and demography. So our data is quantitative data that is gathered between October 2016 and August 2017. It covers 17 districts in 5 big islands in Indonesia. And the documenter, and we employ several documenters. In total, there are 30 documenters, mostly 2 documenters per district. Some districts only have 1. And we recruited the documenters from the HIV population community. And before the documentation happened, we give them trainings about human rights and redress mechanism. And we also equip them with forms. So all the data were gathered by interview by form. And the case criteria that we look is human rights violation. It must happen to person living with HIV or HIV key population, happen between 2016 to 2017, and happen in the 17 district that has been determined. So in the end, we could collect 251 cases of human rights violation. So there are, as I said before, it covers 5 big islands in Indonesia. So there's Sumatra, Java, Bali, Sulawesi, and Papua. And as you can see, the number are different because our district, the majority of our district is in Java. So most of the case found there. And I continue to the key population background. As one person could have more than one key population background, so the number of response, and so we calculated the number of response. From 251 cases, there are 365 response, mostly involving people living with HIV. So 81.3% of our total cases involving people living with HIV, 34.3% of our total cases involving people who use drugs, and there are also sex worker and men who have sex with men. And this is the victim gender and age. So majority, we collected the data violation involving men, but there are also women and trans women. And the victim age usually adult, around 36 to 45, but we also collect data about infant and child. And I move to the result of our documentation. So regarding reporting violence, we see that the number of participation is very low. It's only 18.3% victims who reported their violation to other bodies and in the hope of getting justice. Most of them did not go in this path, 80.5%. So I will move first to the one who did not report. So we tried to ask why they did not report, and most of them don't know where or how they could report it. And it's also related to the first reasons, that they do not realize that what happened to them is human rights violation. And there's also many responses that say that they were afraid because they were still patient or client in one local community center. They still undergo process criminal investigation, so they were afraid that their cases will be worsened. And another reason is they think that the reporting is useless or just time-consuming. And we moved to the 46 people who reported their human rights violation, and mostly it involved bad quality health services. The cases mostly involve bad quality of health services, but also there's unpleasant service by healthcare workers, 7 cases, and infringement of rights to privacy. So all of these cases, their status of LGBTIQ, HIV positive, sex worker, or drug user are revealed to the public without their consent. So there's also the cases, and there were rejection to obtain treatment because of their status. So it's 46%, mostly regarding rights to health. And this is the type of institution where the victim reported their case. So most of them reported to the NGO, although maybe there is some bias in here because the victim itself are interviewed by people coming from community-based organization. So perhaps they already had the good relationship with NGOs. But most of them came to the NGOs. Another type of organization that they come to is the related health institution. What it means by this is when a victim, for example, receives human rights violation from nurses or doctor in one hospital, they directly reported this offense to the hospital manager. So it's what it's meant by related health institution and related educational institutions. And there are several people reported to regional health department. It is the government bodies in the province level that is under the Ministry of Health that provides the healthcare in one province or one district. And there are police and several parties at once. And we categorize the satisfaction level to 5 levels. So the first emoji that you've seen here is very satisfied, and then pretty satisfied, neutral, pretty unsatisfied, and very unsatisfied. As you can see, the number below, the frequency of satisfaction level between the satisfied and unsatisfied are balanced. It is both 18 cases. But as you can see, that almost half of the cases reported to NGOs result in good satisfaction level, 14 out of 29. But if we move to the government side, to the regional health department or the police, we could see that all of the cases reported to them end up not satisfied. And I want to share some success story that are documented by our team. So there's a story about a man in Bali who wants to access ARV after more than 10 months of absence, and he was rejected because the doctor accused him of just wasting the ARV. And 2 weeks after that, he complained to a senior member in an NGO, and the senior member gave the letter of recommendation to the hospital. So after that, when he came back to the hospital again, he could access the ARV. And another story is about Kay. he wanted to start over his methadone treatment after 2 times dropout, but the healthcare worker rejected his application. So he tried to report it to a CBO focusing on drug issue, and the CBO gave a formal reprimand, and the healthcare institution finally agreed to give him the methadone treatment. And another case is in Wamena, Papua. So the victim, his HIV status was leaked, and after leak, because there are so many stigma and discrimination in his neighborhood, he was evicted from his house. So he had to move to his friend's house. And then he reported this to Regional Health Department and also to the NGOs. So they are both working together to give training and counseling in his neighborhood. So in the end, he could come back, and he said that he felt no more discrimination, and he was very satisfied with his complaint. So the discussion about the conclusion about this research, there are a lot of obstacles hindering the victim's participation and willingness to seek remedy. As we could see the table of the reasons, so we need more training to give the community member knowledge about human rights and how they could redress their human rights violation if and to where. And so there's a lot of obstacles that need to be responded. And the second conclusion is most of the victims who reported their cases to the government agency end up not satisfied. And the third one, the role of CBO, NGO are very important to assist the victim to effectively report the violation to government organizations. And they serve as the linking from the victim's misery to the government response. But there are research limitations from my research. First, it was not designed to be generalized in all areas in Indonesia because, as you can see in the map, Indonesia is an archipelago, and there are many cultures, many different social backgrounds in each province. So it could not be generalized to other regions. And because we focus on the victim testimony, it's like clarification from the government side, and it also does not consider other aspects of effectiveness, such as the impact to the larger community, the resource of the governmental bodies to respond a complaint, whether they have the right amount of people or money to respond to the complaint, and other things that are relevant to the effectiveness of the redress mechanism. So this is the end of my presentation. If you want to know more about our organization work or other organization in Indonesia works, you can come to our booth in 110 in exhibition. And if you like our job, we also sell merchandise if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our 4 panelists. Just a couple of remarks. As was said by Annabelle at the beginning, we had the luxury of a bit of extra time for our panelists, which is always nice to have, given that we didn't have one of our panelists join us. So we wanted to let them explain the really great work that they're doing properly. And we had also hoped that there would be some Russian-English interpretation in the room for this session, but that didn't turn out to be the case. So thank you, Anya, for stepping in and helping with presenting the work that ARF and Maxime are doing. Anya is still here, so if you have questions that you want to pose in Russian to any of the panelists, or if you have questions that Maxime might find it helpful to have translated into Russian so that he can respond to you, Anya can help us out with that as well, so thank you. We also wanted to make sure that we heard from all of the panelists first, partly because we think the presentations are nicely complementary, and then we still have a good chunk of time for questions now afterward. I think the presentations that you've given are, as I said, nicely complementary and illustrate a few a few key things. The first of all, although it probably shouldn't need to be said, there is clearly such a need for this kind of support in so many places around the world. We've heard powerful presentations about the situation in Indonesia and in Russia, but of course those are not unique. Those same kinds of challenges in many cases are encountered by people who use drugs, other key populations in dealing with discrimination and human rights violations of various sorts. And yet so often the resources and the services that they need to actually challenge those things are not available. And that even though this really important and groundbreaking work being done, as we've heard, even there, these are still initiatives that aren't really at scale, that aren't capable of meeting the needs that exist across a country or a region. So I first of all just wanted to salute the people that are doing that hard work on the ground, and thank you for it. We've talked a lot over the years about task shifting when it comes to health services, and the fact that you don't always need to go to the highest level of the health system and the most heavily trained professionals in order to address health needs of communities. And we see a parallel, similar sort of thing happening here with access to legal supports and services and information that can be brought closer to the ground, closer to people, made more accessible, and can lead, as we've seen from some of the examples presented, to getting people access to justice in a more practical and in a more immediate way. So these are really, really important elements in the overall scaling up of human rights programs to deal with barriers to health services, to dignity. But it was also interesting to note from the presentation from our colleagues from ARF that while in many cases you can get access to justice in a more immediate, closer to the ground kind of way, one of the things that these kinds of programs also generate is that they surface cases where what might actually be needed is some sort of larger, longer-term structural reform, policy reform, law reform that strategic litigation may in some cases also help us get to, and that both of those tracks need to be pursued. And it's a nice illustration of how investing in these kinds of programs can help with immediate access to justice needs, but also longer term policy reform. And I think in maybe the most important thing that these programs can do is validate the sense that people actually are entitled to rights, create the sense of dignity that people should feel free to enjoy, and that having access to this kind of support can sometimes, for people, help them realize that right, aside from whatever it might mean for changing the world more broadly. That in and of itself is so powerful and so important, and another very good reason to invest in these programs. So let me just stop there and open the floor for questions. We have 2 microphones. Please don't be shy. There's some really rich programming that has been presented to you here with some really important lessons for taking these things to scale. So I hope you'll ask our panelists questions and share your reflections. Maybe we can take a couple of questions all together and then go to the panel for them. So why don't we go to the first microphone here?
Okay. Is this on?
I think so, yeah.
So a question and a comment. My name is Joan Woods. I work in Central Asia, and we have a very similar situation of over-criminalization and lack of services that you all described. Thank you very much for the presentations. Spasibo большое for very nice and informative presentations. A comment is that there was a very good article in a recent, I think, June issue of the journal Science on work on HIV in Russia that people might be interested to see. It was really informative and good. And a question on the Indonesia program. You mentioned that the community level workers encourage police not to press charges, and that sounds difficult to me when I've seen police interactions with PWID. Do you also work with police on the other side in training them, sensitizing them? And if so, could you say a little bit about that work?
Sorry, was that a question to our colleagues from Indonesia specifically? Yeah. So would either of you like to speak to that? question? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know. I said we were going to take a couple, and I'm ignoring my own rule. Yes, please.
Great. Thank you very much to the panelists. My name is Katie Mayall, and I work at the Center for Reproductive Rights. I have two questions for Dina. The first is about how you've gone about selecting judges to join the forum, if there's some sort of criteria you've used to determine who will be the most effective. And also, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the role of your civil society partners in the initiative. Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we do those two questions since we don't have any others at the mic at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for the question. We find that it's real difficult to dealing with the police. First, the problem is the paralegal itself is not really recognized by the police and also and other law enforcement because of the recognition of paralegals is still weak in our regulation. And the second problem is the police officer or law enforcement itself is still doesn't know well about the drug policy, about the treatment policy, something like that. So what we do from the paralegal itself, we do like a hard advocacy and soft advocacy. So the hard advocacy is the legal assistance itself, and we report the human rights violations. And soft advocacy for the police itself, the paralegal, it's kind of they make like memorandum, it's like an agreement with the police that consists of the recognition of the paralegal itself and also the do and don'ts to treat the drug user, and also in the memorandum itself, paralegal provides the certain regulations that police have to know about that. Yeah, maybe that's what the paralegal do. And about other thing that PKI did is like in the drug policy reform. So we also do the sensitize the law enforcement, but in the soft way. So yeah, we're trying to come to the police and we educate them about the HIV services, the hepatitis C services, and also the urgency to decriminalization. So, thank you so much.
I think I just want to add some example. So, as I mentioned before, we also have the paralegal program, and one of our paralegals, very good, excellent paralegal named Heru Pribadi. He's one member of one community, people who use drugs, and he has become our paralegal since 2008. And because of his continue working with drug cases, so he really keep in contact with the police officer, and he also ensured that their right to medication is fulfilled by bringing the methadone or bringing the ARV to the police detention. And I think this kind of activity that really connect between the paralegal and the police officer, although I think it's like some contradictory nature. At one side, they arrest the drug people who use drugs, but at the same time, the police also called for his help when there are people who use drugs in detention. But I think that's one of the progress and one of the positive side of having the paralegals involving with criminal process and criminal investigation, so they know how to communicate or building a relationship with the police officer.
Are there any other questions from...
Sorry, Richard, I was going to... To the two questions in the back. So the first question about how we select our judges. So we rely on our country offices who are based on the ground. Working with judges, there's a lot of protocol, and so we usually rely on our focal points in the country to liaise with the Supreme Court to nominate judges to participate in the forum. But it really depends. It's case by case, depending on the country. Second question was about civil society partners. We rely a lot on civil society for technical experts. For example, SALC often does numerous sessions on either litigation cases or other issues. Relying on our subrecipients and also key population experts themselves to share their experiences. So we do try to involve both.
Thanks. I actually have a question for a double-barreled question for the panelists. For those of you who are doing street lawyer or community legal, paralegal type programs, what has been the reaction of judges in the courts to the presence of those street lawyers or paralegals being there to help support someone who's trying to seek access to justice? And then on the flip side, to Dina, has the issue ever come up in your discussions with judges about, have they identified that it would be helpful in some cases to actually have those kinds of legal support people there with claimants that are coming forward so that they're not entirely self-represented? Or has that not even come up in those discussions with judges?
So regarding our paralegal in court and trial, actually we try to employ two methods. The first one is by giving them lawyer, but because in Indonesia, paralegal could not stand in trial, so they must be accompanied by our lawyer. And usually the judge are fine with it. So I think there less an issue there. But and the second method that we use is shadow lawyer. So usually the paralegal come to the detention in the court before the trial happened, and then the paralegal give and prep the defendant how to defend themselves, how to respond to a question. So they the paralegal do not represent them in the court. They just sit in the back and wait for the defendant to defend themselves. I think that's it.
Yeah, maybe I want to add what Albert said. I agree with Albert's arguments that the paralegal in Indonesia cannot represent the client, so they have to be assisted with the lawyer itself in the trial. So that in paralegal PKNI itself, we emphasize them to do the primary justice in the investigation process other than the trial process. So they do the primary justice in the investigation process, so then they monitor the case process to the trial, and in the trial, as Albert said, that they, help the preparation when the drug user go to trial.
Как я говорил,
So, as I mentioned, in most of the cases, the судьи, да, именно?
Да.
The judges take it very negatively.
И воспринимают это как некое посягательство на их власть.
And they take it as some kind of, очень сложно сказал, as some kind of intervention against their power.
И мне кажется, что здесь есть два важных момента. Первое – это то, что нужно продолжать это делать, чтобы они привыкали к этому.
And I think there are two important things to remember. First, it's important to continue doing this thing, so judges get more used to it, to have someone in the room who is not an attorney.
И второе, о чем я хотел поделиться, это то, что существуют исключения из этого, и некоторые суды и судьи, в которых мы часто участвуем как свидетели, как общественные защитники, уже воспринимают нас, ну, отчасти как партнеров.
And also it's important to share that sometimes it's actually taken more positively, and there are some courts and some judges that already perceive us more as partners.
Это очень эпизодический случай, но я считаю, что нужно продолжать это делать, чтобы, как я говорил, судьи и вот этот механизм, там как-то привыкали к этому.
These are very episodic cases, but as I said, it's important to continue this work so judges get more used to it and cooperative.
Yeah, Richard, I don't think we've really discussed this issue with the judges, no. But under the grant, we have done trainings of lawyers and paralegals, and I think it's absolutely important to continue that training. I mean, as you know, it's faster, it's efficient, and it just gets cases through the system.
Thanks. So I see there's one more question from the audience, and we have enough time for that, and then we should probably wrap up. Oh, you're over there. I can't see you. This thing is blinding me. We'll go here and then there.
Thank you. My name is Connie from South Africa. I just wanted to get more information on the judges training or the work that we have already done in South Africa, and whether are you also training the legal aid board lawyers, and whether I heard that you have included this in the curriculum of lawyers. I wanted to know if this include also the population, those advocates who are doing population. The advocates who do population, whether the curriculum include the training of the advocates. Thank you.
Thanks. So let's just take the last question and then we'll go to the panel.
Richard, if I may make a general comment rather than ask a question.
Of course.
Just to kind of, and it may be just helpful to get a better picture of the Africa Regional Judges Forum as well. In terms of curriculum, judges in Southern Africa, in South Africa particularly, there's a Judicial Institute, have taken on the job of including it into the curriculum and had the first training of magistrates, of 50 magistrates, sensitizing the magistrates on these specific issues and including key population representatives from a range of civil society organizations just recently, really in June this year. And there is more conversations we are having with them so that they can develop a curriculum which can be at least used in the English-speaking countries of African region, because the Southern African Judicial Training Institute as well as the Kenyan Judicial Training Institute are very keen to take this forward. In terms of, I just also wanted to make a comment was that civil society partners have been very, very closely involved in the African Judges Forum and in the sessions that they run. We have been told by the judges that you cannot train judges. Therefore, what we do is that we ask the Judges Forum to select topics that they would want to get more information on, and thereby reach out to both our civil society partners in the legal aid system like the Southern African Litigation Organization, but also through them, again, independently through LGBT organizations, organizations with sex workers, organizations who use drugs, as well as UN partner agencies who have expertise. So it's a whole group of people who get together. So we have academics from the University of Wits and University of Pretoria, for example, on the one hand, and on the other hand, we've had our experts from Gender Dynamics and trans organization out of South Africa, or the Uganda Harm Reduction Network, to come and speak about the issues that people who use drugs face in these countries, or people who are trans people face in respective countries. We also try to bring in as much as possible lawyers who have litigated successfully on similar kinds of rights issues. And there is more work that goes on in a lot of other countries under other grants that UNDP supports on training magistrates. For example, in DRC, there has been widespread work with magistracy at the magistracy level, leading to a lot of cases that have been rejected for lack of evidence at the magistrates courts level, so that it doesn't go up and escalate into a kind of adverse situation. So these are just a few comments that I wanted to make on the forum, and it has been a very, very interesting journey for the last 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional information. So there was the outstanding question, and we will wrap up perfectly on time.
Yeah, so I think actually Saha just answered part of that question, but the Judicial Institute in South Africa does different types of trainings. So this is just one of the many trainings that they have. So I can share more information with you afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our panelists for sharing the important and inspiring work that you're doing. And I'm sure some of them would be happy to tell you more about it if you want to talk to them individually now. Thank you. And thanks to my co-chair, Annabelle.